The cool morning dew on the garden soil felt pleasant against Elizabeth Beth Cooper's palm. At 64, she was absorbed in harvesting the tomatoes she had lovingly tended. The sun was slowly rising, bathing the entire garden in soft light. Beyond the white picket fence, neighborhood children were beginning their walk to school. "George, the tomatoes turned out beautifully this year. Perhaps it was the early morning watering you always talked about." Talking to her husband, who had passed away 3 years ago, remained part of her daily routine. This garden, which they had nurtured together for over 30 years, held deeply etched memories. Under the rose bushes, George's beloved gardening gloves were still carefully preserved. On weekends, her son James, his wife Rachel, and their 4-year-old son Lucas would visit for Sunday brunch. Beth would start preparations the day before, baking apple pie with carefully selected ingredients from Whole Foods and preparing organic dishes to everyone's taste. The table would be set with the fine linen tablecloth George had given her as a wedding gift, alongside the china inherited from her mother. Such peaceful routines were the center of Beth's life. In the upscale Chicago suburb of Winnetka, Beth lived a fulfilling life alone in her traditional 2-story home built in the 1970s. Dressed in casual LL Bean attire, she volunteered at the First Presbyterian Church of Winnetka and enjoyed literary discussions with old friends at the neighborhood book club. Above all, taking care of Lucas 3 times a week brought her the greatest joy. Lucas, who showed signs of being on the autism spectrum, was a small, sensitive child with large brown eyes. Though he spoke little, he shared a special bond with Beth. While he preferred to play alone, his grandmother was the only one to whom he truly opened his heart. In a corner of the garden, there was a small observation space set up for Lucas, where the two would spend time watching insects and birds together. "Grandma, butterfly." Such small whispers from Lucas filled Beth's heart with pure joy. Meanwhile, her son James had achieved remarkable success as a vice president at an investment bank. Always impeccably dressed in perfectly tailored suits, the 5 feet 11 inches slender man had been an exemplary student since childhood. After graduating top of his class from Yale and gaining experience on Wall Street, he had secured his current position in his late 30s. However, lately, he had begun showing signs of stress-related fatigue. During weekend brunches, his frequent work calls had become concerning. His wife Rachel was a stunning woman with model-like proportions. Known as a sharp broker in luxury real estate, she handled multi-million-dollar transactions. With over 100,000 Instagram followers, she seemed to play the role of the perfect wife. Dressed in luxury brands and appearing with flawless makeup, she maintained a superficially kind demeanor toward Beth, though there was always a sense of distance. On the evening of August 12th, a message arrived unexpectedly. "Mother, I have a wonderful suggestion. I think it would be a great opportunity to strengthen our family bonds." Rachel's proposal was a hiking trip in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. She said she had already reserved a private trail called Emerald Lake Trail. "Let's enjoy nature together, James, me, and Lucas. How about taking some time away from our daily routine for family time?" Beth was genuinely delighted by the suggestion from her usually busy son and daughter-in-law. The timing was perfect, as the charity event at First Presbyterian Church of Winnetka had just concluded. This should make for wonderful memories. Her heart leaped at the thought of creating new memories with Lucas. She immediately took out her smartphone to check the weather forecast. The prediction of clear skies only heightened her expectations. "I'll go to Whole Foods tomorrow and make an apple pie for the trip. I'll add a little extra cinnamon, just the way Lucas likes it." As she made these plans, Beth placed the last tomato in her basket. The summer sun shone brightly beyond the garden. She fondly remembered the excitement of purchasing this house with George over 30 years ago. The white picket fence, the well-maintained lawn, and the lovingly tended flowers, all were testament to their life together. 6 a.m., August 15th. The misty Winnetka residential area was still wrapped in silence. James's black BMW X7, loaded with luggage, was parked in front of Beth's house. The usually perfectly maintained vehicle had a thin layer of dust on it today. How odd. James always keeps it spotless, Beth thought to herself. James and Rachel were already standing at the entrance. James, who usually wore suits, was dressed in a high-end outdoor brand jacket today. His profile showed unfamiliar tension. Rachel, wearing the latest hiking wear, frequently checked her smartphone. The same map appeared and disappeared repeatedly on her screen. "Mom, are you ready?" There was a slight tremor in James's voice. "Yes, of course." Beth responded with a smile, though concerned about her son's demeanor. "Lucas, it's okay. Grandma's here with you." While comforting Lucas, who was reluctant to get in the car, Beth's sense of unease grew stronger. Though her grandson was typically shy around others, he seemed particularly anxious this morning. Beth did a final check of her equipment. A new smartphone for taking pictures of Lucas, light hiking gear, and a first aid kit just in case. And of course, Lucas's favorite blue teddy bear. "Rachel, did you scout this route beforehand?" When Beth asked, Rachel's expression momentarily tensed. "Yes, of course. I consulted with a professional guide and chose the optimal course. It's a very quiet spot on a branch of the Emerald Lake Trail." Rachel answered with a perfect smile, but her voice carried an unfamiliar urgency. The 3-hour car ride was wrapped in strange tension. James took work calls every 30 minutes, pulling over to the shoulder each time. Her son, who usually spoke in a calm voice, was giving short, curt responses today. "Yes, I understand. Definitely by Monday." Sweat beaded on James's forehead after he hung up. Despite it being August, the car's air conditioning was working fine. In the passenger seat, Rachel obsessively kept checking the route. Specific locations on her smartphone screen were repeatedly zoomed in and out. Her occasional glances at Beth through the rearview mirror were unsettling. In the back seat, Lucas clung anxiously to Beth. Though he usually didn't mind car rides, today he seemed unusually restless. "Lucas, look at the clouds in the sky. That one looks like a bunny, doesn't it?" When Beth tried to comfort her grandson, he seemed to calm down slightly. Eventually, Lucas fell asleep on his grandmother's lap. "Mom, did you sleep well last night?" James suddenly asked. "Yes, just like usual. But you look tired, dear." "Work's been busy, but I'm fine. This vacation should help me refresh." Contrary to his words, James's voice rang hollow. Outside the car window, urban landscapes gradually gave way to natural scenery. However, in contrast to the beautiful views, the atmosphere inside the car grew increasingly heavy. At 9:30 a.m., they finally reached their destination. At the entrance to the Emerald Lake Trail branch, there was a sign reading, "Private Trail, no trespassing." After parking in the empty lot, Rachel quickly surveyed the surroundings. "Looks like no one else is here." There was an odd relief in her voice. While preparing, Beth took out her new smartphone to take a family photo. However, Rachel hastily stopped her. "Mother, let's take photos at the lookout point. The view from there is spectacular." The hike began. Rachel led the way, frequently checking the map. Beth followed second, holding Lucas's hand. James brought up the rear, still tied to his phone. The well-maintained walkway gradually transformed into a rocky path. Morning light filtering through the trees created a contrast of shadows and brightness. However, in Beth's heart, an ominous feeling gradually grew stronger. At 10:15 a.m., the group arrived at an observation point above 6,500 feet. A 30-foot cliff spread before them, with sharp rocks and bushes scattered irregularly below. There was no sign of other people around, only the mountain wind rustling through the trees. "The view from here is magnificent." Beth took out her new smartphone and started recording video. The screen captured the deep blue sky and verdant mountains. The thin air at this altitude made breathing slightly difficult. "Lucas, look! There's a hawk over there." Gently holding her grandson's hand, Beth pointed to the sky. A brown raptor was drawing elegant circles in the air. "Hawk, pretty." Lucas unusually spoke up, completely absorbed in watching the sky. Grandmother and grandson shared a quiet moment about 6 feet from the cliff's edge. That's when she heard an unnatural sound behind her. Turning around, she saw Rachel standing at a distance, holding her smartphone. However, there was no shutter sound. The screen remained black. "Mom." James's voice echoed unusually low. Footsteps approaching from behind. Clearly different from her son's usual gait, these were heavy steps. An inexplicable chill ran down Beth's spine. Then it happened. "Sorry, Mom." With those whispered words, a strong impact hit her back. Instinctively, Beth hugged Lucas tightly. Her smartphone slipped from her hand, flying in a low arc, landing in the bushes at the top of the cliff. It continued recording quietly with its screen facing down. The world spun. Lucas's scream pierced her ears. The sound of cutting wind. The sound of clothes tearing. And consciousness fading away. "Lucas. Lucas." Even as she fell into darkness, Beth desperately continued to protect her grandson. 10:20 a.m. Dull pain shot through Beth's body as she lay on the intermediate rock shelf. In her faint consciousness, her first concern was her grandson's safety. Lucas had rolled into some bushes. Fortunately, branches had cushioned his fall, leaving him with only scrapes. Beth desperately signaled to her grandson, who seemed about to cry from fear. "Tch." Lucas instinctively obeyed her subtle finger gesture. From above, she could hear her son and daughter-in-law's voices. Beth completely stopped moving. Enduring the pain from what might be broken bones, she played dead. Moving in this situation could bring further danger. And more importantly, the smartphone continued recording everything. The conversation on the cliff. The sound of wind. And gradually, the horrifying truth becoming clear. In Beth's heart, deep maternal sorrow intertwined with a strong will to protect her grandson. The sun continued to shine brightly in the sky, and the hawk continued its majestic circling. However, in just a few minutes, her world had completely changed. At 10:25 a.m., Beth had fully regained consciousness. Through the pain and fear coursing through her entire body, she held her breath and listened to the conversation above. Lucas, as if instinctively understanding the situation, remained quiet in the bushes. "She's dead." James's voice carried a coldness that Beth, who had loved him as a son, could never have imagined. "Shouldn't we check?" Rachel's voice carried down on the wind. The voice that had played the perfect wife now filled with anxiety and urgency. "No one could survive a fall from that height. This makes for a perfect accidental death." Beth's heart froze at James's words. "When will the insurance pay out?" To Rachel's question, her son answered mechanically. "As early as 1 month. This will cover the company's whole." In that moment, all the pieces fell into place. Her son and daughter-in-law's unnatural behavior, the sudden trip proposal, the choice of an isolated location. Everything had been preparation for a planned murder. Beth suppressed intense nausea while maintaining complete stillness. The pain in her possibly broken left arm was far less severe than the heartache from her son's betrayal. Above, the conversation between her son and daughter-in-law continued. "James, are you sure this was the right thing to do? We had no other choice. Once the company audit starts, everything's over. $5 million in embezzlement isn't easy to hide." "But your mother." "Shut up. You're an accomplice too. The luxury condo mortgage, the party payments, it was all my money." Beth held her breath. She never imagined her son's life would unravel like this. Yale University valedictorian, investment bank vice president, perfect family. Was it all just a facade? At that moment, Lucas made a small movement. His eyes, peering through gaps in the bushes at his grandmother, were filled with anxiety and fear. Beth tried to reassure him by slightly narrowing her eyes. "I'll call 911. Rachel's voice was shaking. "Wait. First, check the surroundings. We need to eliminate any evidence." At those words, Beth strengthened her resolve. She had to continue playing dead now. For Lucas's safety. And to preserve the evidence. The smartphone that had fallen into the bushes at the top of the cliff was still recording. Though the screen faced downward, its microphone captured all conversations. The couple remained unaware that their voices were being recorded. On the cliff above, Rachel appeared to be calling 911. "Please help. My mother-in-law, from the cliff." Perfect acting in feigning distress. Her social media honed acting skills were now manifesting in a terrifying way. "We're at a branch of the Emerald Lake Trail. We were hiking as a family when, oh, how terrible." Reporting with a tearful voice. However, Her voice carried calculated modulation. James began his act too. "Mom. Mom. Please, hold on." It sounded exactly like when he called out with fever as a small child. But now it carried an entirely different meaning. For about 45 minutes until the rescue team arrived, Beth maintained complete stillness. While her body's pain increased, her heart ached even more. As her son and daughter-in-law continued their act of waiting for rescue before her eyes, she quietly accepted the collapse of her son's life. Yale University graduation ceremony. The vice president promotion party. Lucas's birth. All those happy memories now took on a different hue. However, in this situation, Beth could do only one thing: protect Lucas and reveal the truth. That was all. Soon, the roar of a rescue helicopter echoed against the mountainside. Minutes later, a mountain rescue team member carefully approached Beth for confirmation. A young team member in orange rescue gear reached out to check her pulse. At that moment, Beth whispered in an extremely low voice, "I'm alive. But please act as if I'm dead." The team member's hand paused momentarily. "Why?" the member whispered back. "My son and daughter-in-law tried to kill me. Everything is recorded on the smartphone at the top of the cliff. They think I'm dead. Please, my grandson is in danger." The professional team member continued to act as if performing normal rescue operations without changing expression. He radioed headquarters. Code 472. Situation at scene more complex than anticipated. Headquarters immediately responded to the encrypted rescue code. Police notification began. Meanwhile, on the cliff above, the son and daughter-in-law continued pretending to be distraught. "That mother would." Rachel's tearful voice resonated as perfect acting. "I'll need to confirm." A newly arrived police officer began to investigate the scene. "To confirm the body." "No." James's voice rang out abnormally strong. "I don't want to see my mother like that." However, the police officer's eyes had already caught the unnatural circumstances. Why was this location without safety railings chosen? Why bring an inexperienced hiker to such a dangerous spot? A drone deployed to assist in the search discovered the smartphone in the bushes. 3 hours of recorded video contained all the truth. "James Cooper, Rachel Cooper, you're under arrest for attempted murder." The police officer's voice echoed across the wilderness. "This is a misunderstanding. We..." Rachel's voice trailed off. The perfect performance had come to an end. James showed no resistance, just staring ahead with empty eyes. Before the company audit revealed, we tried to cover it with insurance money. The confession began with surprising ease. The truth came to light. $5 million in investment losses. $3 million embezzled from company funds. A plan to cover it with life insurance money. 2 weeks of careful scouting and planning. The insurance amount was increased 1 month ago. James just nodded to the investigator's words. In the ambulance, Beth could finally shed real tears. "Lucas, it's okay now." Her arms holding her grandson still ached, but the pain in her heart was far deeper. The ambulance descended the mountain. Through the small rear window, she could see her handcuffed son and daughter-in-law getting into police vehicles. The couple who had grown tired of playing the perfect family and made the worst choice due to financial collapse. Beth could only quietly accept their fate. Grandma. Lucas's small hand gripped Beth's. That warmth signaled the beginning of a new life. Mid-September, 1 month later. Beth tended to her new garden at a colonial-style house in the quiet residential area of Lake Forest, Illinois. This home was about 30 minutes north of her previous residence. She had chosen this location, just a 10-minute drive from Lucas's therapy center. Grandma, tomatoes. Lucas's voice rang out cheerfully for the first time in a while. He had discovered perfectly ripened cherry tomatoes in the small garden plot in the front yard. Yes, they look ready to harvest. Beth quietly watched her grandson's progress with joy. With the help of psychological counseling, Lucas was gradually regaining his speech. Though the incident had certainly affected him, he was finding his own stability in his new life with his grandmother. In the backyard, she had recreated the memory garden she had shared with her late husband George. The white picket fence, rose bushes, and small vegetable patch. Even in this new environment, precious memories would continue. Mom, aren't you going to visit him? Friends from her support group often asked this question. But Beth's answer remained consistent. It's not time yet. But someday, surely. James had received a 20-year sentence at Illinois State Prison for attempted murder and embezzlement. Rachel too received a 15-year sentence as an accomplice. The truth revealed in court was even more serious than imagined. The company embezzlement began 5 years ago. It started with small amounts. However, Rachel's luxurious lifestyle and James's failed investment gambles gradually increased the sum. The perfect life they portrayed on social media had been entirely fabrication. As collapse approached, they chose insurance fraud as their final resort. They spent 2 weeks scouting the location to make it look like an accident. The prosecutor explained, leaving Beth only able to sigh deeply. In the custody hearing, Beth was granted full guardianship. The court determined that the grandmother was the best candidate for raising 4-year-old Lucas. At the First Presbyterian Church of Winnetka support group, Beth met others facing life's trials. There, she began using her experience to support others. We can find hope in any situation. These were words Beth often spoke in the support group. They were also encouraging to herself. In the study of her new home, family photos were displayed. Pictures of memories with George. Photos of James as a child. And new photos with Lucas. Not denying the past, but moving forward while accepting everything. That was the path Beth had chosen. Lucas, it's snack time. The aroma of homemade apple pie wafted through the house. A scene from unchanged daily life. Yet within this tranquility, new hope was surely sprouting. At dusk, Beth sat on the backyard bench, gazing at the western sky. Beside her, Lucas was intently studying his new picture book. George, please watch over us. Smiling toward the sky, Beth quietly made a vow. To continue cherishing each day. And to carefully nurture this new bond forged through adversity. Tomorrow would bring another new day.